"Daddy, are you watching?" The voice came through his phone speaker, small and excited, filtered through the basement hum of machinery and darkness. Marcus Rivera didn't look up from the relay panel in front of him. He had been staring at this panel for 3 hours now, watching the same numbers repeat, watching the same warnings flash red on his diagnostic tool. December 23rd, 8:47 in the evening. The city was performing above him. Aldridge Tower stood 42 stories high, its glass face catching every color the sky could throw at it. Amber from the plaza spotlights below, blue-white from the television crews setting up on the corner for the fireworks broadcast. The faint anticipatory glow of fireworks, not yet lit, but already promised. On the streets above, vendors sold roasted chestnuts from silver carts. A string quartet was playing somewhere near the lobby entrance. The sound of celebration had become a weight in the basement, a pressure that settled in Marcus's shoulders and his jaw, reminding him that the world above was celebrating while he stood alone in the fluorescent darkness below. Sophie. His 6-year-old daughter was still on the line, still waiting for an answer. "I see Lilybug." The nickname came out of his mouth automatically. He had called her that since she was born, and even though she was 6 now, and insisted she was too old for nicknames, they both knew she secretly loved it. The man on the news says the big ones start at 9. "Can you come up? Can you watch them from the roof?" Marcus finally looked at his phone. His daughter's face was lit up orange from the television in Mrs. Pearson's living room. Her chin was resting on her knees. Her hair was in 2 uneven braids that he had done himself that morning while she ate cereal and corrected him about how tight they should be. He had been getting better at braids. Barely. "I'm still working, baby. But you can watch from Mrs. Pearson's balcony, right? She has a good view." Sophie's face fell. It was only for a moment, but Marcus saw it. He always saw it. She had learned to read people because her father was terrible at hiding things. "You said you would try," she said quietly. "I know, baby. I will try. But work might keep me late." "You always say you'll try. You should try harder." 6 years old, and she was already learning how people said things that weren't quite true. Already learning that adults made promises they couldn't keep. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. The guilt that lived there permanently, the guilt about Dana, the guilt about his choices, the guilt about not being enough. "You're right," he said. "I'll try harder, I promise." Sophie smiled. It was a small smile and it broke his heart. "Now go enjoy the show, okay? And Sophie, don't go near the balcony window when the fireworks start. They're loud." She made a dismissive sound that was pure 6-year-old confidence. "I'm not scared of fireworks, Daddy. I know you're not, baby, but loud is still loud. Promise me you'll stay back." "Promise," she said, and she wriggled back into the couch, already forgetting him, in favor of the pre-show announcement. He ended the call and set the phone face down on the concrete floor. The relay diagram in front of him was not encouraging. Marcus had been with Aldridge Property Services for 6 years now. Before that, he had been a licensed electrical engineer for a defense contracting firm in Maryland. 12-hour days, significant salary, a business card with a title printed in fancy font. That life had ended suddenly with a blue sedan running a red light and a hospital room and a custody agreement that nobody had expected to write. Dana, his ex-wife, had survived the crash. She had survived it and then decided that being a mother wasn't what she wanted to do. The paperwork had been efficient. She had signed away parental rights without negotiating. Marcus had looked at the business cards and looked at his daughter, who was 10 months old and didn't understand that her mother had left, and made a decision that felt less like a choice and more like the laws of physics. You moved toward the weight. You didn't move away from it. Now he worked maintenance at Aldridge. He was the best maintenance technician they had. His supervisor knew it. and used it. His colleagues respected him and occasionally resented him. The tenants above him in the marble lobby and the glass-walled executive suites mostly didn't know he existed. He preferred it that way. The relay diagram showed what he had suspected for 2 weeks. The VIP elevator shaft, the private car that served floors 38 through 42, had a critical fault in its secondary power circuit. He had filed the maintenance request on December 9th. It had been marked low priority by building management because the elevator was rarely used during non-event hours. Tonight was an event. Marcus pulled his diagnostic tool from his kit and pressed it to the main contact strip. The reading came back wrong. Not wrong like miscalibrated, wrong like dangerous. The kind of wrong that meant if someone got in that elevator, if the secondary relay failed while they were between floors, they could be stuck. Or worse. He tried to call the VIP lobby. The phone rang. Rang again. No answer. Of course not. It was 8:47 on December 23rd, and nobody was monitoring the maintenance line. He called his supervisor. Voicemail. He left a message about the relay panel and marked it urgent, knowing it wouldn't matter. Knowing that urgent on Christmas Eve meant nothing to anyone. He set the phone back down and stared at the relay panel, at the warnings flashing red, at the system that was failing quietly and visibly 40 stories above his head. 40 stories above Marcus Rivera, Catherine Wells was deciding to leave her own party. This wasn't unusual. She had hosted 37 corporate events in the past 4 years. She had stayed at most of them long enough to shake the hands that needed shaking and say the sentences that needed saying. Then she departed with the practiced efficiency of someone who understood that her presence was a resource to be deployed, not enjoyed. She did not enjoy parties. She endured them. Catherine Wells was 36 years old, with the kind of precision beauty that looked severe in photographs and more unsettling in person. Dark hair cut to the jaw, cheekbones sharp as a financial forecast, eyes the specific gray-green of winter harbor water. She had been described in business profiles as formidable, exacting, relentless, and once memorably as a chess player who finds the other party's move amusing before destroying them. She had not corrected this. Accuracy was accuracy. Her company, Wells Capital Group, had closed 3 major acquisitions that quarter. The celebration was technically for her team. 60 people who had worked brutal hours for 5 months straight. She had given a speech at 8 o'clock. It had been exactly 6 minutes long, well-received, and entirely impersonal. Now it was 8:47 and she was done. Catherine moved toward the exit with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this 37 times before. Her assistant, a composed young woman named Devon Reeves, appeared at her elbow. The Donovan Group representatives haven't arrived yet. You did agree to meet them tonight. I agreed to make myself available until 9 o'clock, Catherine said. She handed her champagne glass to a passing server without looking at them. Tell them 9 o'clock is the window. If they miss it, they can call the office Monday. Of course. Devon paused, the kind of strategic pause that indicated she was about to deliver information she knew her boss would not like. There's also the matter of the elevator maintenance. We sent a note that the VIP car may need attention. It might be down for the evening. Catherine had already started moving. I'll use the main elevator. The main elevators are backed up from the party traffic. It will likely add 20 minutes to your descent. Catherine didn't break stride. Then I'll wait. The private elevator lobby was off the main corridor, behind a panel that required a key card. The car itself was paneled in pale oak and brushed brass, with a small upholstered bench built into one wall, an amenity that Victoria had never once used, though she had approved the renovation budget that installed it. The lobby was quiet. The sounds of the party receded behind the panel door, like a memory she was already leaving behind. Catherine pressed the call button. The elevator arrived within seconds, the doors sliding open silently. She stepped inside. The interior lighting was warm and even inset along the ceiling perimeter. But as the doors closed and the car began to descend, she noticed something she had never noticed before. One bank of lights stuttered. Once. Then again. Catherine looked up. The elevator continued moving. Floor 39. Floor 38. Then it stopped. Not the smooth, cushioned stop of a car reaching its destination. This was an abrupt cessation, a jolt that sent her half a step sideways and caused her to catch the brass handrail with both hands. The display panel above the door showed a number frozen between 18 and 19, though she was nowhere near those floors. Either the display was wrong or the car was wrong. She waited 5 seconds. Nothing moved. She pressed the lobby button. Nothing. She pressed the door open button. Nothing. She pressed the emergency call button and heard a faint electronic tone from the intercom panel followed by silence. "Hello," she said. Her voice was controlled, the way she had trained it to be in all situations. "This is the VIP elevator car. I'm between floors. I need assistance." Static. Then distantly, as if the signal were traveling through water, the sound of the party. Music. Someone laughing. The string quartet impossibly far away. Nobody was listening. She pressed the button again and again. Her phone showed 1 bar of signal, enough for the screen to be on, not enough for a call to connect. She typed a text to Devon. "Stuck in VIP elevator. Get maintenance." She watched it sit in the outbox unsent. The lights flickered. Catherine Wells, who had negotiated in rooms where careers lived and died, who had been in 1 aircraft emergency and 1 hostile board takeover attempt, stood in a stalled elevator between floors and felt the specific fear that comes from being trapped. It wasn't the physical confinement. It was the loss of control. It was being in a situation where her competence meant nothing, where her money meant nothing, where she was simply a person in a box between floors with no way to get out. She sat down on the bench. Her hands were shaking. She did not allow her hands to shake. In the basement, Marcus Cole was making a decision. He had climbed an active elevator shaft exactly once before during training 7 years ago with equipment and protocol, and someone waiting at the top. He knew what it was like. He knew the danger. He knew it could cost him his job, violate every safety regulation, expose him to liability he couldn't afford with a 6-year-old daughter, depending on him. He also knew that someone was in the VIP elevator. He had heard the car start its descent. He had heard it stop abruptly, the sound wrong, the mechanical protest unmistakable to anyone who knew how to listen. Marcus pulled on his work gloves. He unsealed the shaft access panel, and darkness looked back at him. The shaft rose above him, a vertical tunnel of cable and metal, and nothing else. 40 stories of nothing else. His work lamp illuminated maybe 10 feet up, before darkness swallowed the light. He grabbed the first handhold and pulled himself up. The shaft hummed. He could hear the elevator car, above him, caught on the secondary relay, the machinery trying to compensate, clicking and straining. The sound told him everything. The system was seconds away from complete failure. And if it failed with someone inside it, if the car dropped, or if the secondary relay gave out entirely, if the electrical fail-safes failed their own fail-safes, then a person could be hurt, could be worse than hurt. He climbed. Hand, foot, hand, foot. The muscle memory from years of installation work took over, but everything else screamed at him to stop. The pain in his shoulder, a pre-existing injury from the car accident that had changed everything, started screaming around floor 15. He ignored it. His hands burned even through the gloves. Around floor 22, his left hand slipped on something and came away wet. He didn't look at it. The cut would be deep. He didn't have time to care about it. Around floor 31, doubt hit him like a physical thing. This was a violation of every rule, every protocol, every safety requirement. He would lose his job. Aldridge would fire him and likely sue him. The union might decertify him. And there was Sophie. There was always Sophie. There was the custody agreement that was contingent on him being stable and employed and able to provide for her. There was everything he had built in the last 6 years, balanced on the edge of a knife. He kept climbing. He could hear the elevator above him now, really hear it. Could hear it trying to move. Could hear the relay clicking, clicking, clicking like a mechanical heart under stress. At floor 38, he pulled himself up onto the secondary landing. His hands were slick with blood. His shoulder was on fire. His breath came in gasps. The maintenance access was right there. He unsealed the panel. He pried open the shaft doors. Light poured out of the elevator car, harsh and fluorescent. And for a moment, he couldn't see anything except that light and the shape of a woman inside, standing with her back to him, one hand on the brass handrail, perfectly still. Catherine Hale heard the sound before she understood it. A grinding metal-on-metal sound. Then a shaft door screaming open. Then light. A work lamp harsh and yellow, and a man silhouetted in the opening chest, heaving, hand bleeding. "I'm sorry it took me so long," he said, still breathing hard, as if he were explaining a technical problem, and not the fact that he had just climbed 40 stories through a pitch-black shaft. "I came as fast as I could." For a moment, Catherine couldn't move. This was impossible. You couldn't climb a shaft. You couldn't just appear. You didn't, but he had. He did. The elevator's secondary relay is critical. He continued, still breathing hard, still staring at her, like she was the one who had done something brave. "I had to get you out before it failed completely." "You climbed," she said. "Yes." "Through the shaft." "Yes." "That's illegal." He looked at her, and there was something in his expression that shifted everything. Not judgment, not pity, just clarity. Just the look of someone who had made a choice and wasn't going to apologize for it. "Your safety is illegal," he asked quietly. "I hadn't heard that before." "What's your name?" Catherine said. "Marcus Cole. Maintenance." "Marcus Cole," she said slowly, as if she were testing out the weight of the name. "You just risked everything to get me out of this elevator." "Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am," she said. "Not after that. Call me Catherine." "Catherine," he said, and he extended his bleeding hand to her. "Let's get out of this shaft." She took it. The walk down was slower than the climb up. Marcus was bleeding. Catherine was shaking, though she was trying not to show it. The building's security chief was waiting at the bottom of the shaft, and there was a moment of pure electric silence as the situation became apparent. A maintenance worker had climbed an active elevator shaft. A tenant, a powerful tenant, was being helped out of that shaft. Questions were being asked silently, and Marcus was already prepared to take the fall. Catherine looked at the security chief. "Call building management," she said. "Tell them the VIP elevator had a critical relay failure. Mr. Cole here was following my explicit instructions to ensure my safety and the safety of this building. I want a full incident report on my desk tomorrow morning, and I want maintenance scheduled for the entire VIP shaft before we allow anyone in that car again." The security chief nodded and moved away, making calls. "The medical office is 2 floors down," she said. "Come with me. I should get back to work." "You should get your hand looked at," she said, in a tone that suggested this was not a negotiation. They walked through the building's corridors like an odd pair. The maintenance worker covered in sweat and grease and blood. The executive still in her party dress, still composed except for her hands, which had never quite stopped shaking. The building's medical office was small and efficient. The nurse who opened the door at this hour was professional and discreet. She cleaned the cut, which was deep but not arterial. She stitched it. She wrapped it. Tetanus is current, Marcus said. Good, the nurse said. When they left the medical office, Catherine turned to Marcus in the empty corridor. Why did you do that? She said. Do what? Climb the shaft. Risk everything. He was quiet for a moment. His hand throbbed. His shoulder throbbed. Everything in him was screaming to leave, to go back down to the basement, to pretend this night never happened. Because someone needed help, he said. And I could help. So I did. You don't know me. No, he said. I don't. You're risking your job, your reputation, your entire livelihood. Yes. Why would you do that for a stranger? He looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who was trying so hard to hold herself together. At the woman who had been terrified in that elevator and had tried not to show it. At the woman who was probably used to doing everything herself, solving everything herself, being impeccable in every way. Because I couldn't not, Marcus said simply. Some things you do because you can't live with yourself if you don't. They stood there in the quiet corridor between the party and the basement between worlds. I should get back to work, he finally said. Where do you live? Catherine asked suddenly. What? Where do you live? Your address. Why? Because I'm looking into it, she said. I'm looking into everything. The elevator failure, building maintenance protocols. And you. Whatever consequences come from what happened tonight, they won't come to you. That's what I can do. That's the one thing I can actually do to make this okay. My supervisor will file a report. Let him. I'll file a report too. My report will be the one that matters. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that he didn't need her help, wanted to go back to his life, his basement, his routine. But he thought about the future. He thought about explaining to Sophie why he had lost his job. He thought about the fragile balance of his life. And he said, Tremont Avenue, Building 32, Apartment 3B. Catherine nodded. I'll have someone look into it. Look into what? Everything, she said again. The rest of the night, Marcus worked in the basement, waiting for consequences that didn't come. The next morning, he was called to the office of his supervisor, who looked confused, and told him that Miss Catherine Wells had filed a commendation. Not just a report. A commendation. A formal recognition that Marcus Cole had prevented a catastrophic safety failure by acting decisively and with full authorization from building management. His supervisor didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. The lie was too big, too official to contradict. Marcus said yes before the supervisor could change his mind. That night, when Marcus picked up Sophie from Mrs. Pearson's, Sophie asked why he wasn't smiling. She read people well because her father was terrible at hiding things. Marcus told her he had helped someone at work. A lady. Is she nice? Marcus thought about Catherine, about her terror in the elevator, about her choice to protect him in the corridor. I don't know yet, he said. Well, Sophie announced with the certainty of a 6-year-old, you should find out. You're the nicest person I know. She'll probably be nice too. The following week, Marcus was sent to the 37th floor to check the ventilation system. As he walked past the conference room, he saw Catherine eating lunch at a table by herself, reviewing documents. She looked up when he passed. Their eyes met. Something flicked across her face. Recognition, gratitude, something else she didn't have a name for. She looked back down at her papers, but not before Marcus saw the expression. 2 weeks later, Marcus received official notification of his promotion. He was being moved to systems supervisor. It was a position that didn't usually come up, but apparently someone with authority had suggested he would be perfect for it. Better pay, better hours. He would still do maintenance work, but he would oversee the team and attend building management meetings about structural issues and system upgrades. For the first time since he left electrical engineering 6 years ago, Marcus felt like maybe his sacrifice wasn't wasted. Maybe giving everything up for Sophie was actually the right choice. Because this job, this position, was because of who he was. Not what credentials he had, but the kind of man he was. Someone who climbs into darkness for strangers. Someone who shows up. The first building management meeting Marcus attended was on the 37th floor. There were 7 other people there, including Catherine. She was at the head of the table reviewing files about a building that Wells Capital had recently acquired. She acknowledged Marcus when he walked in with the slightest nod. Nothing that would signal to anyone in the room that they knew each other, that she was terrified, and he climbed 40 stories to save her. During the meeting, Catherine mentioned that the building on Tremont Avenue needed a full systems review. Every electrical system, every safety protocol, every infrastructure component. She wanted it done thoroughly by someone who understood the work and didn't cut corners. She was looking directly at Marcus. Jenkins, who sat beside Marcus, tensed up. "I'll do it personally," Marcus found himself saying. "Good," Catherine said, with the same flat professionalism she used with everyone else. "I want the report in 2 weeks." Marcus understood what was happening. This wasn't a coincidence. This was intentional. She was assigning him to audit his own building. She was giving him a reason to spend hours there, weeks there. She was making it official, making it work-related, making it so they would see each other. On a Saturday in early March, Marcus brought Sophie to the office. This wasn't planned. It was a circumstances situation. Mrs. Pearson had a family commitment. The backup sitter had canceled. Marcus had a 2-hour systems review that couldn't be rescheduled. He had called in to apologize and explain, prepared to reschedule regardless. He was told by Devon that bringing Sophie would be fine. It's Saturday. The only person in the office is Miss Wells. Marcus was not certain it would be fine. But it was. Sophie approached every new environment with the systematic curiosity of a very small scientist. She spent the first 20 minutes examining the view from the 37th floor, with her nose against the window. She pointed out buildings and streets, and the river in the distance. Then she sat at the conference room table with her coloring book and crayons. Then she wandered to the doorway of Catherine's office, and stood there with the particular energy of a child who had found something interesting. Marcus noticed from across the hallway and was about to intervene. But Catherine looked up from her screen and looked at Sophie. "Do you work with my dad?" Sophie asked. "Yes," Catherine said. "He said you own buildings." "I do." "Do you own the one we live in?" "I might." Sophie considered this with the seriousness she applied to all information. "We live on Tremont Avenue. Building 32 apartment 3B. She described it exactly. They have a nice neighbor on the 4th floor who gives her cookies. And there's the elevator that makes a noise, like when the dishwasher is tired. Catherine almost smiled. Marcus could see the muscles around her mouth, considering it, deciding whether to fully smile or not. "I'll have someone check on that," Catherine said. "My dad can fix it," Sophie announced with complete confidence. "He fixes everything. He fixed our radiator and the neighbor's lock, and once he said the elevator in our building, but he said that was probably not technically allowed." Catherine looked at Sophie with an expression that was difficult to read. Something behind her eyes that was soft. Something that suggested she was thinking about what it would be like to be someone who was confident. Someone would fix things for you. "He's fixed quite a few things here too," Catherine said quietly. "In the building." "I know," Sophie said. "He told me." Sophie paused. "He said you're the one who runs everything." Catherine considered this statement. "And you think he should run everything here instead?" "No," Sophie said with the clarity of a 6-year-old. "I think he should fix things that are broken. That's what he's good at. Fixing things that are broken." Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Sophie stood in her doorway with the particular confidence of a child who had spoken something true. "I think you might be right about that," Catherine said finally. When they left the office, Sophie held Catherine's hand down the elevator without being asked. Catherine looked at the small hand in hers, like she wasn't sure what to do with it. But she didn't let go. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Marcus lay in bed thinking about the moment Catherine held Sophie's hand. He thought about the way Sophie had described their apartment to Catherine. He thought about Catherine's quiet admission that Marcus was good at fixing things that were broken. He thought about what it might mean that Catherine was paying attention, creating reasons for them to interact, and now holding his daughter's hand. In mid-April, Marcus and Catherine were in a conference room, reviewing plans for the Cariel, a 1920s residential tower in the North Quarter that Wells Capital had recently acquired. The retrofit schedule was ambitious. New electrical systems, updated infrastructure, a rooftop terrace that didn't exist yet, but would if the plans worked out. They were deep in discussion about budget timeline and safety protocols. Catherine was listening to Marcus's technical recommendations with genuine interest. This was the work part of their relationship, the professional side that allowed them to interact without directly acknowledging the other dimensions of what was happening between them. As they looked at the plans, Catherine mentioned that the Spring River Festival was coming to the North Quarter in late April. The festival included fireworks over the river. The Cariel's rooftop would have a perfect view. They could host a community event. They could align the building launch with the festival. It was good business. Marcus looked at the calendar. April 26th, a Saturday. Sophie didn't have school. He said they should do the event on that night. They should coordinate with the city, so the fireworks viewing was part of the building launch. Make it more than just commercial. Make it about the community and people coming together. Catherine looked at the proposal. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "You're suggesting this for the building," she said. "Yes," Marcus said. "Or you're suggesting this because your daughter would be available on that date." He didn't deny it. Some things were worth being honest about. "It's good for the building," he said. "And yes, Sophie should be there. But I wouldn't have suggested it if it wasn't good for the business." Catherine looked at the plans, at the rooftop terrace, at his handwriting in the margins explaining the business logic and the community draw and the perfect sight lines for fireworks. "You did this deliberately," she said. "Yes." "Knowing I would approve it because you were right about the business decision." "Yes." "And knowing that I would have to make a choice between the professional merit of the idea and the fact that you were clearly doing this for personal reasons." "Yes," Marcus said. "I know what I did." Catherine looked at the plans for a long moment. Then she said, "Approved. And you should bring her, your daughter, to the event." "She's already planning on it," Marcus said. "I know," Catherine said. "You planned everything." "Not everything," Marcus said. "I didn't plan for you." Catherine looked at him directly. There was vulnerability in her expression, and also fear. The fear of someone who had never been the object of someone else's intention. The fear of someone who had always been alone. For what? For this. For you. "I didn't plan for you." April 26th arrived clear and cold, the way spring evenings sometimes are. The temperature honest about the season. The sky unwilling to compromise on its darkness, which made the fireworks extraordinary. Sophie stood at the rooftop terrace railing with her hands gripping the top bar. Her braids were tight, tighter than they had been in the past, because her father had been practicing. It showed. She was watching the sky above the river do everything it knew how to do. She wasn't watching on a screen. She wasn't watching through a window. She was watching it. Marcus stood beside her, one hand near her shoulder, in case she leaned too far, watching her watching the sky. And he felt in the particular way that life delivers its best moments sideways and without announcement that things were different than they were in December. Not fixed, not resolved into something simple, but different. Changed. He heard footsteps behind him. Catherine came to stand on his other side, close enough that he could see her face in the light of the fireworks. She had her hands in the pockets of her coat. She was watching the sky. "The building looks good," Marcus said. "It does," Catherine said. "The terrace retrofit came in under budget." "I know." I read the report. A pause. Below them, the festival crowd made a sound, a collective intake of breath. A particularly large firework opened over the river, silver white and enormous, hanging for a long moment before it fell. "Daddy, that one," Sophie said, pulling his sleeve. "I see it, Sophie girl." "Miss Wells," she asked, turning to Catherine, "did you see that one?" "I saw it," Catherine said. Something quiet in her voice, something that had been there since December and that she had stopped trying to manage away. "It was beautiful," Sophie said. "Yes," Catherine said. "It was." Marcus looked at Sophie, who had turned back to the river. He looked at Catherine, who was still watching the sky. He looked at the city below the river, reflecting the fireworks, the doubled light in the water. "I looked up the building on Tremont Avenue," Catherine said quietly for him alone. "We own it. I had someone check the elevator last week. The noise was a worn bearing in the motor housing. It's been replaced." He looked at her. "It's a small thing," she said. "It's not," he said. She was quiet. The fireworks were ongoing. The river reflecting them doubled. The whole world for a few minutes symmetrical and luminous. "I'm not very good at this," she said. "At what?" "At whatever this is. At caring about people. At letting people care about me." Marcus looked at his daughter, who was mesmerized by the fireworks. Then he looked at Catherine, who was trying so hard to be honest with him. "I've been mostly bad at it for 6 years, Marcus said. "Since the accident. Since Dana left. Since I had to choose between everything I had been and everything I needed to be. I chose Sophie. I chose to be someone who showed up. And some days I still fail at it. Some days I think I'm not enough. Some days I wonder if she would be better off with someone who had it all figured out." "So you're not good at this either?" "No. But I try. Every day I try." Catherine almost smiled. The almost smile Marcus had been watching for months. The one that was more real than most people's full smiles. "Your daughter thinks you can fix everything," she said. "She's 6. She'll figure out the truth eventually." "Maybe," Catherine said. A pause. "Or maybe some people just actually can." Marcus looked at Catherine. She was watching the sky, the fireworks, the river, the reflected light on everything. She looked like a person who had been locked in darkness for a very long time and was choosing slowly and with difficulty to step into the light. Sophie tugged his sleeve. "Is Miss Wells staying to watch the big finale?" He looked at Catherine. Catherine looked at Sophie, then at Marcus. "Yes," she said. "I think I'll stay." They watched the finale together. The 3 of them at the rooftop railing. The father, the daughter, the woman who was terrified in an elevator between floors and learned that some people actually do climb 40 stories to help strangers. Who learned that showing up day after day, choosing someone again and again, is its own kind of love. When the final explosion finished and the smoke cleared, Sophie said, "Do you want to get hot chocolate?" The man at the stand said he'd still be there. "Yes," Marcus said. "Yes," Catherine said at the same time. They walked down from the rooftop, the 3 of them, and Catherine held Sophie's hand. When they got to the ground level and Sophie let go to run toward the hot chocolate stand, Catherine reached for Marcus's hand instead. He held on. Later, when Sophie was asleep that night, she had a dream about fireworks and rivers and her father fixing broken things. And in that dream, she understood something she didn't have words for yet. That fixing things meant showing up. That love meant paying attention. That the people who mattered were the ones who climbed through darkness again and again because someone needed them. And on his own bed, unable to sleep, Marcus thought about the moment in the shaft when he unsealed the doors. He thought about Catherine's face when she saw him. He thought about the choice she made in that corridor to protect him, to make sure he didn't lose everything. Some people carry their value in titles and credentials and the rooms they're allowed to enter. Others carry it in the hand they hold, in the daughter they raise, in the person they become because someone needed them to become it, in the one moment again and again when they choose to climb into the darkness because the light on the other side of it matters. The city was still performing. Aldridge Tower still stood 42 stories above the street. But inside the building in the basement and the 37th floor, and a small apartment on Tremont Avenue, people were learning how to matter to each other, how to show up, how to fix broken things, not because they wanted credit, but because they couldn't live with themselves if they didn't. Marcus continued his work as systems supervisor, but now he did it with the knowledge that his sacrifice 6 years ago wasn't wasted, that choosing Sophie over his career was the right choice, that being invisible, being quiet, being the person who fixes things without asking for credit, that wasn't a failure. That was a kind of strength. Catherine stopped hosting events she didn't enjoy. She started taking lunch in the conference room, and sometimes Marcus joined her. They talked about buildings and systems and the city. They talked about what it meant to be present for someone. They talked about what it meant to try every day, to be better. Sophie grew up knowing her father as someone who climbs into darkness when people need him. She grew up knowing Catherine as the woman who decided to stay. She grew up knowing that love isn't about being perfect or having everything figured out. It's about showing up. It's about trying again. It's about holding someone's hand on a rooftop while the world lights up. This was the story of a maintenance worker who climbed 40 stories to save a stranger. This was the story of a woman who learned that she was worth saving. This was the story of a daughter who knew even when her father forgot that he could fix broken things. And this was the story of what happens when you choose in the darkness to climb toward the light.